Hi there, Thor owners. Today in your 2020 Thor Windsport, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Sumo springs for the rear axle. So we got our Sumo springs installed. We're going to hit our test course here and see the difference. Last we drove this is when we had put the sway bars on it, and that helped reduce sway, but it did still have some sway. So we're hitting our bumps course once again, now with the Sumos on there. And we're doing our uneven bump section here. And you can definitely tell a difference with the Sumos on there. When we hit the bumps, it's a little bit smoother than it was before. It's a little bit more even. Even though we're hitting only a single bump here, you can kind of feel like the motorhome's lifting more up versus more of a tilt. So it seems like the suspension's kind of working side to side with one another to help keep it upright more. Now we're going into our even bump section, and this is going to simulate like a speed bump or pulling in and out of your driveway. And we do get a little bit of dampening here. We can feel that when we hit the bump in the steering wheel, if I don't hit it perfectly straight, it doesn't seem like it wants to jar quite as much as it did, and it just seems to like it has minimized how much up and down bounces we had after we went over the bump. So now we're going to head over to our slalom section, where we're going to mimic an evasive maneuver. And this is usually where I notice a huge difference between our test drive where we did not have our Sumos on versus when we do. And that's mainly because this is kind of where we're getting some speed into it. On the test course there, it's more the bumps we're feeling and stuff, but this is where we actually get into the meat of how it feels when you're handling it. And we're gonna go up to a little bit of speed here, and we're gonna act like there's a cap of a tire that's in the middle of the road here, and we need to get around it. So again, we're not at highway speeds, but we're here in our parking lot, got a little speed going, and here we go. And as we turn it here, it has definitely done a huge difference. I almost feel like we have almost no sway. As far as going back and forth here, we don't really have a lot of tilt in the motorhome. So all of our passengers are definitely gonna appreciate that we don't have nearly as much tilt. When we went back and forth, there was a little bit of rocking we had go on, but I would say that it feels like we've had a much greater reduction in sway now that we've put the Sumos on there. It's kind of hard to tell since we put the sway bar on first, how much more the Sumo springs are doing, but in the past when I've done the Sumos instead of the sway bar and then do the sway bar after, I usually notice a bigger impact with the Sumos than I do with the sway bar. All right, so now that we've got this guy out and we've hit it on the course, we're gonna go ahead and get it back and get it to our customers so they can enjoy their new suspension enhancements. And this is what our Sumo spring looks like when it's installed. It attaches to the frame of the vehicle on the upper half, and on the lower half it attaches to our leaf spring stack, which is bolted directly to our axle here with our U-bolts. So as our axle moves up and down, when you're going down there on the road and our suspension moves, this part here is going to basically be kind of a constant. I mean, our vehicle is going to move up and down, but the suspension as it goes up and down will squish our spring and extend our spring as necessary for it to travel on down the road. The benefits we get from this is that our Sumo spring is going to assist carrying the weight of the vehicle. Now, it doesn't increase the amount that your vehicle can carry, it just provides support to assist your existing suspension components in maintaining the heavy weight of your vehicle here. The Sumo spring can compress up to 80% to provide its dampening and assist throughout your suspension system. So you get up to 80% compression with it, and that's your maximum as far as like your the most that it can possibly squish and support. And what I found with these installed is they really help out throughout pretty much every aspect of your suspension travel. Whether you're wanting this to help just dampen road obstructions such as potholes and things like that you might hit out on the road that kind of jar your vehicle, this is going to help to absorb a lot of that road impact and prevent it from transferring into the cab of the vehicle. It's also going to help reduce sway, because as our vehicle wants to tilt to one side or the other, it has to compress or stretch the spring depending on which side it's tilting on. And the spring wants to stay in its normal resting position. So as you go to compress it, it wants to expand back to where it was, helping pushing your vehicle back upright and keeping it straight. So just all around, this is, to me, one of the biggest improvements that I noticed with a single component when we put it on and we hit our test course. This definitely absorbs a lot of the impacts from the bumps. And I actually find that in the bumps course section of our bumps course, this actually does more in preventing sway than like upgraded sway bars do. Now again, that's on the bumps course. As that translates out on the highway, it may not be the better of the two, but it does do a fantastic job in reducing sway and preventing forces from transferring into the cabin. This is going to help to extend the life of all your suspension components because it's going to help absorb some of those forces. So like things like your spring eyes and stuff like that aren't going to take as much of a beating as they would before. Now, in addition to rear Sumo springs, you can also get a set for the front, and that'll really help tame your beast there. Now, if you still seem to be combating some issues with sway and it still feels like you're having to work hard keeping the vehicle going straight down the road when you hit various impacts or heavy crosswinds, things like that, a further increase for your suspension system would be upgrading your sway bars. You can get those from Roadmaster here. You can get those for both the front and the rear. Those are going to help further reduce the amount of sway that you get on your motorhome. And if you're hitting potholes and it really jars your steering wheel to the left or to the right, even after putting the Sumo springs on, they're going to help mitigate some of that. But if you still seem like you're really struggling with those potholes and things like that or heavy crosswinds, I'd recommend checking out a steering stabilizer from Roadmaster. Now, it doesn't actually work with your suspension system. It works with your steering system to help keep the steering wheel in a straight path down the road, and you get a dampener that's a part of that, a gas-filled dampener, as well as a spring set. The dampener is going to take those impacts you get on the road that transfer into your steering wheel, and they're going to help to minimize how much it jerks the wheel to the left or to the right. And then the spring mechanism on it is going to help pull the steering wheel back to center, so that way you're not the only one doing all the work of keeping that wheel straight. If you add all these components together, it really does make a big difference in reducing the amount of fatigue you get when driving down the road, because you don't have to fight so hard to ensure your family's safe when you reach your destination. To begin your installation, we need to take our wheels off here. Now, it's not 100% necessary to remove the wheels. You can actually reach over top. You know, there is enough room to reach in here, but in all honesty, it's usually easier to take the wheels off because we have several holes we got to drill into the frame. The frame's pretty thick, and this is a long distance to try to get enough force to drill holes into the frame. It can be done. I'm almost 6.5 feet tall though, and even I struggle with it. I still remove the wheels so I can get my body in there and get the forces I need to be able to drill those out without killing my arms. So we're gonna get the wheels off of it. We've used our leveling jacks to lift our motorhome off the ground to the point where our wheels are off. And you can see underneath there, we do have some pads that we've got installed under here. You can get those from e-trailer here, from UltraFab. It just gives you a little extra boost so you can lift your motorhome up a little bit higher. Those are also very useful for campsites, for some really uneven terrain and stuff. You might have one leg that just doesn't quite touch because it's a little lower down. You can use those for that too. So they got some multi-purpose. And we also place some jack stands underneath the frame because we don't want to trust just our hydraulic jacks supporting the vehicle. We want to have stands under there so we have some physical contact, ensuring that it can't drop down on us. Once you've got it off the ground, we can get the wheel removed. We've got a chrome cover on here that we'll have to take off first. If you look at your caps here, you'll see that some of them have like a little indentation on them, a little indentation. And also if you have these hose whips, that's where you would install those. So that easily identifies 2 of those, but there are 3 that are required to get this cap off. So we're gonna start with the 2 easy ones we can easily identify. I've got a 1 1/8 inch socket, and I've just got it on an extension here. These typically aren't that tight, so you can usually take them off by hand, just with like the socket in your hand. Here's that little indentation that I was talking about. It's just a cap crimped on a nut, so those are the little crimps that hold it on. So don't try ones that don't have this because there's actually no nut below them. They're made into the chrome piece. You'll damage the chrome piece if you try to remove ones without those indentions. So now we've got all the nuts off. There was 2 there and there was 1 down below. We can slide this out now. If you got hose whips, you have to feed those through. So just make sure you're feeding those as you're pulling it out. And then we can set our chrome hubcap aside. And now we've got access to the lug nuts behind it. We've got a 13/16 socket here to remove each of our lug nuts. We're just gonna get all these zipped off of here. Now we got all the lug nuts removed, we'll remove our wheels. I've got a pry bar that I've sat underneath, and then you can kind of use that to just slide it on out. kind of back it out some. We do got to pay attention to our hose whip here, get that out. And then once we get that out of the way, make sure we're all clear. This can just roll off to the side. We're then gonna remove our other wheel, very similarly, get our pry bar into there and use that to help us just kind of glide it off of there. And there we go, and then we can just kind of roll this one out. So now we got to do a little bit of preparation before we get our bag in place there. This is our bag. The top's got 4 holes in it, and this is our top bracket. It has 2 holes in it. The holes are different spacing apart. We want the widest set of holes there. Those are going to line up with these 2 holes. So we're just going to set this right on top of our bag there, line up those holes. And we'll take the hex nuts here that come in our kit, the shorter ones, the silver colors, and we're going to put those right on top. After we've got those set in place, we can go ahead and zip them down. Then flip your bag over, your spring over here. You'll have one more nut or one more bolt, same size that we're going to put on the bottom here. This is our lower bracket. It needs to sit on here. We're going to leave this bolt loose so we can pivot this, and then we can finish snugging it up at the very end, because you can see you can easily get in here to snug these down. All right, so we've got that in place on there. We still can rotate it. I'm going to run it down just a little bit, just take up some of the slack. Then we're going to back it off enough to make sure that we can still pivot it. So now we can get our spring set into position. The bottom can pivot. We want the hook to face towards the rear of the vehicle. We want our top bracket with the bolt holes towards the frame. This little hook here needs to hook around the front U-bolt. So that's this guy right here. So it'll sit on top of our leaf spring stack and hook around that. Now you may have things like we do here where we're running into some wiring that we've got over here. So we're gonna have to relocate this wiring. In order for it to fit, we should be able to just use some cable ties and secure it up higher, so that way our spring will sit into place. So we're going to grab some cable ties and we're going to move that wiring up. You may or may not need to do that at home. It just depends where and how the manufacturer ran the wiring. And you could have the exact same year, make, and model, and they can run it in a different location, because it just depends on the guys working on it and the factory that they're working at. So next we need to make our marks where we need to drill out the holes. This is going to happen at 6 inches down from the frame, and that's where our bottom hole needs to be located. So first we need to find the top of the frame. So this is actually a plate here welded to the side, but we can access the top of the frame right here. So first we're going to go to the top of the frame, and we see that at 2.5 inches down from the top is the bottom of this plate here. So we know that if we go from the bottom of this plate, we've already got 2.5 inches. So if we go another 2, that's 4.5. That'll be 5.5, and then a 1/2 inch right there puts us at 6 inches from the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and make our mark there. And the other thing that I like to do just to confirm it, if you just measure the whole distance of the frame from top to bottom, we're real close to about 9 inches, about 9.25 inches. So that way we can measure from the bottom up. And yeah, we're right at about 3.25 inch there. For our measurement from the bottom, which kind of verifies that we are right at about 6 inches down. We're going to make the other mark on the other side of our spring here, so that way we know how high we need to raise up our axle here to get our holes to line up. So we're going to go ahead and grab our jack and put that into place next. So we're taking our jack, we're going to put it underneath the axle over here on this side, and where I'm putting it, those U-bolts that we were looking at earlier that we put the hook around, I'm putting it on the plate that's just, that's kind of between the U-bolts. The U-bolts actually drop down and the nuts connect this plate to it, so I'm putting my jack right underneath that plate. And then we can now lift up on our axle until our marks are near those lower holes. All right, so we've got it set into place. We've lifted it up with our jack, and you can see now that lower hole's right next to our mark that we had made. So now we're gonna clamp our spring into place so it can't move. We'll leave our jack there so it holds it in place, and then we can drill it out. But I like to kind of secure some things so that way when I'm drilling, this thing's not vibrating around too much, getting out of position. These are the long carriage bolts that come in your kit. They drop down through the lower bracket. There's a square hole located on each side that those long carriage bolts will drop down. Well, then I have our strap clamp here that goes underneath. So we're just coming from underneath and sliding this onto our carriage bolts, bringing that up. And then we're going to put not an nylon locking nut, just a regular locking nut onto each of these carriage bolts. So now I've got a 9/16 socket here. I'm just gonna go from below and we're gonna zip our nuts on up. I am holding the carriage bolt down because if you keep it down into the square hole, it prevents it from spinning. And I'm just bringing it up real close till about it touches, and then I'm gonna go do the other side. All right, so we've got it clamped down. All I'm doing here really is just kind of straighten it up just a little bit. We can straighten it up more after we get that first bolt in. But we're pretty well lined up there. We're gonna take our 3/8 bit now, and we're gonna drill out our hole. Did want to mention real quick too, before you guys start drilling at home, I already checked on the other side, but make sure there's nothing in the way that you're going to end up drilling through, no parts or anything. I do know that there are some fuel lines and brake lines towards the top hole, so we're just going to be careful when we drill through. There is a space, about an inch gap, so we just need to make sure when we drill through, we don't stick our bit way too far through to damage anything. After I drill out the first hole, I'll take the black hardware that comes in the kit here, I'll slide it through the hole and secure it with a nut on the other side. That'll just keep it from moving around, so when I drill out the rest of my holes, I know that they are gonna all fit. So now that we've got the first hole drilled out, I went ahead and took one of the black bolts that come in the kit and I secured it. Just slid it through and put a locking nut on the other side and secured it. That way when I drill out the rest of my holes here, it kind of holds it in place so that way I know they're gonna line up. After I do my second hole, I'll do the same thing, and that'll further make sure it can't move, and then the last two holes, you can drill both of those out and put your hardware in at the very end. So after I got the second hole at the bottom here drilled out, I put a bolt in there just like we talked about. Finished drilling out both top ones, went ahead and stuck the bolt up in there. The other one here just simply slides in. This is how you're gonna do all of them. It's just that the first two on the bottom, I like to do one at a time so things can't move around on me. And now we use the top holes for the remaining two bolts, but you can use that middle hole if you want to. That hole is there in case there's something, some sort of obstruction in the way on the other side of the frame, so you can't use the top hole or something like that. Or if you need to use, same with the bottom hole, if there's something in the way on the bottom hole, you could use the middle if you needed to. But ideally you'll use the top and bottom if everything's lining up okay. It's just kind of an emergency hole if you got some manufacturer installed device that's right here on the inside of the frame that you really don't want to move or relocate. So now we're just gonna use a 9/16 socket and wrench to snug all of our hardware down here. Once you've got all these snug down, don't forget to come here underneath the bottom. Grab your little 9/16 wrench and this one bolt that we had left loose here. Just go back and snug that guy down at this point. So that's gonna have everything completely done on this one side here. Everything's secured to the frame. We're secured down here at the bottom. We got our bolt. We're now gonna take the same procedures we did over here and apply that over on the passenger side. Everything's gonna be exactly the same. The only real difference is our lower bracket here is the exact same bracket for both sides. So the hook over here on the driver's side is on the inside of the U-bolt. Over on the other side, your hook's gonna be here on the outside, and that's basically it. It's gonna be the same otherwise. All right, now that we've got all of our hardware tightened down, that'll complete our installation of this Sumo spring. You'll do the exact same thing over on the other side. Once you've got the other side completed, all we've got left to do here is to just put our wheels back on and then make sure we torque our wheels to the manufacturer's specifications. Then we can get our vehicle back on the ground and go for a test drive. And that completes our installation of Sumo Springs on the rear axle of our 2020 Thor Windsport.